Man, you don't simply need to communicate more. I hate that advice. More of the wrong type of communication will only destroy your marriage faster. For a lot of you, for me, I didn't need to communicate more. I needed to figure out why the way we were communicating and fighting wasn't working for us. Because men, I can tell you there is a way to fight in your marriage that leads to more sex and less complaining and less conflicts in the future. And there is another way to fight, one that contains name-calling or criticism or interrupting or manipulation or avoiding or blaming or passive-aggressiveness or the silent treatment or building up resentment. That type of fighting that so many of us, including myself, have a habit of drifting into is one of the largest contributing factors for divorce, and millions of men don't even know they're doing it. And I'm not saying it's all your fault, but all men say they seem to want a marriage with more sex and less fighting, but few of them actually know the steps that need to be taken to get one, because one of those steps is handling conflict in a healthy way. So here's my cheat sheet on how you can actually work towards that goal. If she comes to you heated or fired up about something, you need to be prepared in advance, or else you will screw this up. The time to prepare for the storm isn't when you're in the middle of it. And I would know, I've been in more storms and screwed up more fights than most of you, so you need to listen to me on this. If she's passionate or angry or sad or upset about something that either you did or didn't do, your first goal is keeping your mouth closed, which will be harder than you think, because if you're anything like me, you love to open it up and stick your foot in there. But you're not talking because you want to be disengaged or uninterested. That doesn't lead anywhere healthy either. No, you're not talking in this moment because you want her to know that her voice matters. You're providing her an opportunity to share her perspective, and you're reminding her that you're interested in whatever she's feeling. And you can't do those things if you're yelling or interrupting or talking over her or telling her why she's wrong to feel a certain way. Because trust me, you're going to be tempted to correct her facts. You're going to be tempted to tell her why she shouldn't feel that way. You're going to be tempted to counterattack and bring up complaints that you hadn't expressed in the past, so you can show her that she does the same thing to you, but you're a bigger person because you didn't make a big deal of it at the time. Or you're going to want to remind her that she's unfairly blaming you. Or you're going to be tempted to just focus on solving whatever the problem is. And sometimes the problem, in your opinion, is that she just doesn't understand the situation correctly, does she? She really just needs your help. You're doing her a favor. She needs you to remind her what you really meant, or that you were just joking. She needs you to help her see that she's just making a big deal of this. And you can help her, she just needs to listen to you, right? And I'm simply warning you, when you do that, when you default to your natural tendencies in a fight, all you do is invalidate her perspective or hurts or feelings. And when you chronically invalidate her, when you tell her she's making a big deal about something, or when you tell her that her feelings are essentially wrong, and especially when you escalate conflict with your own anger or frustration and throw it back at her and call her crazy or tell her that her feelings aren't your fault or your responsibility, you just create more distance and more pain and more hurt between you than when the fight even started. And the tragic irony of how so many husbands handle conflict is this: so many of you are defending yourself or correcting her or downplaying her hurt or avoiding the tough conversations that need to be had in the hopes of protecting the closeness in the marriage, not realizing that you're actually killing it. You're robbing the marriage of the benefits of honesty and vulnerability and intimacy, and replacing them with cancers like selfishness and pride and arrogance. And whether it's unintentional or not, it doesn't matter. The result will still be the same: the death of the relationship over time. Because when you fight to be right and win an argument, the marriage always loses. Few marriages end due to an abundance of healthy conflict resolution and listening and understanding and validating and empathizing and apologizing with and to your spouse. Millions of marriages die due to a lack of those things. So quit doing what's not working and try something new. So here's your cheat sheet. Number one, don't escalate. Don't make the situation any more heated. Practice now what you're going to do and what you're going to say when she comes at you upset or hurt or angry about something that you do a week from now. Because everyone thinks they're a nice person until they feel unfairly blamed or criticized or attacked. How nice do you act then? Do you calm the chaos or do you pour gasoline on it? The first few minutes of an argument almost always determine whether it ends positively or negatively. Don't be afraid to start over if you realize this didn't start well. Saying, listen, I'm sure this wasn't your intent, but I'm feeling attacked. I feel like I'm getting heated and I don't want to say something that I don't mean. But I know this is important to you, so can we start over in 30 minutes? That's not weakness, men. That's called strength. That's self-control. That's self-awareness. Self-awareness and emotional maturity aren't weaknesses, despite what every man in your life has taught you. Reflecting on or exploring or identifying your feelings or fears or desires along with your partners isn't weakness. It's strength, and it's very sexy to your wife. Don't believe me? Ask her. And the opposite, being overwhelmed by her feelings and needs and chronically invalidating or dismissing them, is weakness, and it will destroy your marriage just like it did mine. So do whatever you need to do to not escalate the situation. My suggestion, just like we talked about earlier, close your mouth, but stay engaged and interested and create an environment where she feels safe to share. Explore her perspective, invite and encourage her feelings instead of dismissing them. Even if the conversation started heated, that almost always lowers the temperature in the room. You know why? Because deep down, people desperately want to be heard when they're upset. One reason she might be getting loud or being critical is because she doesn't feel like you'll listen any other way. Remind her that she doesn't need to yell to be heard. Because when you find yourself in a fight, it's easy to feel like it's you versus them. But you have to stop that mentality. Remember, you aren't fighting against your partner. You're fighting towards reconnection and understanding and healing. Sue Johnson says it this way: we have to dive below to discover the basic problem. These couples have disconnected emotionally. They don't feel emotionally safe with each other. What couples and therapists too often do not see is that most fights are really protests over emotional disconnection. Under all the distress, partners are asking each other, can I count on you? Depend on you? Are you there for me? Will you respond to me when I need, when I call? Do I matter to you? Am I valued and accepted by you? Do you need me? Rely on me. The anger, the criticism, the demands are really cries to their lovers, calls to stir their hearts, to draw their mates back in emotionally and reestablish a sense of safe connection. She goes on to say, when marriages fail, it is not increasing conflict that is the cause. It is decreasing affection and emotional responsiveness. Is that your marriage? Are you prioritizing affection and emotional safety in your marriage? Because if you're not, that path leads somewhere. Don't be surprised when you end up exactly where you're headed. Because if she doesn't feel safe to share how she feels, if she doesn't feel safe to express a hurt or a complaint about a behavior or an action of yours that made her feel neglected or unappreciated or demeaned, if she doesn't feel safe to share those things, you don't have a relationship with her. You don't have trust or emotional connection with each other. You're not working towards more sex and less fighting. You're working away from those things. And to most men, they feel like, well, those are just woman questions, right? I mean, do I feel valued and accepted and appreciated and desired? Can I depend on you when I call? I mean, that's stupid stuff, right? Except for the fact that you ask those questions too, you just don't realize it. That's why some men have affairs, because they lost trust in their partner and they gravitated towards someone else that made them feel valued or accepted or desired, didn't they? Men, being ignorant of your fears or needs or desires doesn't help your marriage. It hurts it. So humble yourself and ask her, do you feel safe to express something that's bothering you? Because sometimes it's not you. Sometimes it is you, but sometimes it's not you. Sometimes she doesn't feel safe to share because of her own fears or insecurities, that you won't love her or accept her unless she agrees with you or appeases you, unless she conforms, unless she's easygoing or defaults to what you need, want, and desire. And if you're a loving husband, remind her that you actually want to know the real version of her. She doesn't need to hide things from you in order to keep the peace out of fear of conflict. Marriages thrive when they're filled with two people that actually have a desire to fully know each other and be fully known by each other. Because if she avoids conflict to keep the peace, too often she starts a war inside of herself. And some of you are married to women who are suffering in silence and secretly building up bitterness and resentment or fear towards you. And if you truly love her, you'll make sure that isn't happening. That's protecting your marriage. That's what faithfulness and commitment actually look like. Okay, so 1, don't escalate. 2, make sure you're creating a safe place for her to share anything by listening first and seeking to understand her perspective. 3, ask clarifying questions. What are you feeling right now? What led you to feeling that way? What did I do, even unintentionally, that may have contributed to you feeling that way? Take an interest in what's going on inside of her. She's only the most important person in your life. Your goal should be to understand her point of view so well that you could repeat it back to her, and she would be satisfied with your summary. Most women don't want you to take responsibility for the way they feel. Most women don't want you to feel attacked or like they're calling you a failure when they bring up a complaint. They simply want to be heard and understood and validated. Validation means that once you've done the work to see it from her point of view, you would say something like, I can completely understand why you would feel that way. That makes sense. Remember, you can still empathize with her hurt or perspective, even if you don't agree with it. That's our goal here. So take turns speaking and take the focus off yourself. If she's upset or angry or hurt, and she had the courage and vulnerability to actually share that with you, you need to give her the floor. Take turns and take the focus off yourself. That doesn't mean you won't get a chance to share. That doesn't mean you can't bring up a concern later on. It simply means you value her enough to give her the first opportunity to speak. You love her enough to defer to her. That's what love does. That's what leads to more sex.
I'm up. What were we talking about?
Oh, I'm so glad that you're here with us. Maybe you can field this one. What are women's major complaints in marriage?
Oh gosh, there's so many.
Maybe it seems like there's so many because they all stem from the same issue that we as men aren't prioritizing. Maybe the issue is she feels emotionally disconnected from us, and she needs to know that she's more important than any fight that we might have. She needs to feel safe to be vulnerable with us. And right now, maybe she doesn't. She needs to know that her feelings aren't a burden to you. Is it worth asking her if any of those are true? The answer is yes. You should be nodding here.
Okay, I didn't realize this was interactive.
These are the things that lead to accomplishing the goals in our marriage. This is what she needs from us to feel valued and loved and prioritized. Remember, trust and safety are built in the small moments that are consistent over time. It's those small moments of thoughtfulness and kindness and compassion that have the biggest impact in our marriages. And the opposite is true as well. The absence of them, even if it's unintentional, is neglect and selfishness. And of course, it's easy to agree with me while we're talking about this. It's always easier to solve a problem or see the full picture when you're not triggered or feeling attacked or blamed, isn't it? But it's a whole different story when you're in the middle of a fight and your blood is boiling. So let's work on our conflicts in our marriages beforehand. It doesn't have to be such a strain on the relationship. It doesn't have to be something we fear or avoid. It can be a great tool. It can help you understand each other better. It can help you learn about each other's triggers or fears or desires or needs. It can help you both practice vulnerability with each other, but only if we let it, only if we do it correctly. Men, that's what builds intimacy and closeness with her. And let me let you in on a little secret. You pursuing intimacy is very attractive to her, but you'll never get the benefit of it if you refuse to even look up what builds it or strengthens it. So make a plan for what you're going to say when conflict comes up. Write down a cheat sheet. Remember to listen instead of get loud. Get curious instead of confrontational. Listen hard for the hurt underneath the anger or the unmet need or desire underneath the complaint. Shift the focus to them. Take turns speaking. You'll have your time to talk later when things are calmer. Don't argue or correct. It doesn't help anything. It only hurts things. Don't defend your actions or dismiss the way she feels. Just try to understand what made her feel that way or what she's needing from you in this moment. And then apologize when it's appropriate. And stop saying, well, I'm sorry that you feel that way. Or, I'm sorry, but I wouldn't have done that if you would have just done this. Or, fine, I'm sorry, geez. Those aren't apologies. Apologies don't shunt responsibility. They own their share of how they may have contributed to the conflict in whatever way. And I'm not advocating apologizing for things that you didn't do. I'm not saying you apologize before you even understand what hurt her. I'm simply saying be open to acknowledging how you may have hurt her or made things worse, even if it was unintentional. Remember, if she says you hurt her, you don't get to decide that you didn't. It doesn't make you a bad husband that you unintentionally hurt her or neglected her, but you can become a bad husband real quick by mocking or invalidating or demeaning or dismissing her concerns or complaints as burdens or overreactions. And I don't know about for you, but for me during conflict, anger comes easy. But when it comes to your marriage, it's not the presence of conflict or the failures and anger that hurts our marriages. It's not the conflict itself that's bad. It's how we handle conflict in a destructive and toxic way that ultimately destroys our marriages. It's ignoring how to repair after conflicts. It's not being able to speak with empathy or compassion to our spouses when they're hurt. That's what kills our marriage. And if you have an anger problem like me, you need to be hyper aware of all of the sensations inside of you during a fight. The moment you feel like your heart's beating faster, your voice is starting to elevate over hers, the moment you feel hot like your blood is boiling, or angry that she's unfairly blaming you, the moment you feel like you want to throw something, you have to stop. You have to get better at recognizing those signs and stopping the conversation before it gets out of hand. You can always pick it back up once everyone's calmed down. Sometimes that's what makes the difference between a marriage that succeeds or one that fails. And I don't know about for you, but for me, I want my marriage to thrive, not just limp along. I don't want to do marriage like everyone else, with a lack of friendship and very little passion or playfulness, one where everyone's really busy with either kids or their work, when they have no idea how to handle conflict in a constructive way. You've seen that marriage. Maybe it was your parents' marriage. Maybe it was your first marriage. Maybe it's your current marriage. Dare to do something different, maybe even something that's difficult. Respond instead of react. Men, learn what intimacy and vulnerability and empathy and validation even are. Most of you still won't look them up even though I told you that they're pillars of what makes your marriage successful. That's a problem. Remember, new habits are always going to be difficult, and love always requires something from us, like kindness and thoughtfulness and consideration and selflessness. Your marriage requires things to thrive instead of die, things like closeness and emotional connection and trust, being able to rely on them when you need them. And I know most of us aren't selfish. We're not self-centered, but we sure can act like it during our conflicts, can't we? And I know most of you have good intentions to have a great marriage, but intentions are worthless without follow-through. And I believe you that you're trying, but sometimes you need to redirect your efforts to the areas that matter most. I had to realize that I don't know what I don't know, but what I don't know can still hurt my marriage. And anything worthwhile requires effort and intentionality, and your marriage is no different. It's the most important relationship you could ever work on. So get to work because it's worth it. That, my friends, is what leads to less fighting and more sex. Are you kidding me? You were asleep this whole time, weren't you?
I wasn't sleeping. I was just resting my eyes.
Really? What was I talking about?
You were talking about, marriage stuff.
What stuff specifically was I talking about?
Listen, I'm gonna be honest with you. I was also resting my ears.
Okay, well, this was a colossal waste of my time, so I'll see you in the next one. Or maybe not. I don't know anymore. Maybe I'll just sit out here in this hot garage for the rest of my life, talking to no one. Listening to planes fly overhead every 45 seconds. Remember, you can still empathize with her hort. What's up? Yeah.
Oh, okay.
What can I help you with?
Nothing, I'm on mosquito control. I saw you had tripod and camera.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Can you hear that?